Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the podcast, Truth to Power. Truth to Power is a program that is designed to highlight issues happening in and around Nigeria, specifically issues around the persecuted minority and Christian communities in Nigeria. And when we talk about persecution, most often than not, it's from one group of persons to another group of persons. In the course of the program, you get to find out who are the ones at the receiving end of persecution in Nigeria. And this podcast comes up every Thursdays evenings and with a rerun on Sundays. And today on the program, we shall be basically looking at what has been happening in Plateau State. Plateau State is in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria, captured as a north-central geopolitical zone, but when you look at it, it's actually in the Middle Belt. And what is generally called the Middle Belt of Nigeria is believed to be those minority groups or the non-Hausa Fulani groups and communities that are scattered across Nigeria from the western middle part of the country to the eastern middle part of the country. And today we'll be looking at that. And just like the lead up to the program, we will be bringing you an insert. And this insert is happenings that happened in Jos, not just specifically now, in the neighborhoods around Jos, Plateau State. And after listening and watching that insert, we will come and introduce our person, our anchor man, I would say, because he is a regular and a constant on the program, Truth to Power. Let's listen to this. After it, we will introduce our resource person this evening.
My name is Uvar Julius Jonah, former MYM chairman, that is Mokavol Youth Movement chairman, Manguwo 2. I'm a resident of Cha community, where the last night attack that took place in Mangu local government. We've been witnessing this crisis for past 3 months now. And yesterday it was another attack on the Mokavol nation and in Cha village community. The way that these militias came into this village was a tactical movement. And we are condemning this attack in totality.
Okay, so when you say tactical movement, what do you mean?
The tactical movement, because the way they came in, our men, the youths in the community are always vigilant. They are even there safeguarding the community towards the night. They didn't see they are coming, but from this periodical shooting that came in, they scroll from the ground before they approach the community. That shows that it's a tactical approach. That shows that there is an intelligence among them. We are not saying that it is accompanied by the security, but we are saying that these people have been reinforced. And we are saying no to this attack.
So you mean when they noticed that the local civilian guards were keeping watch, they crawled through the corn farms or something and got...
Yes, they crawled towards the compound. Before you know it, there was a sporadic shooting within the house that they approach, and that is where they get these our brothers and our sisters.
How many?
4 of them, as we are talking now. A husband and his wife, and one brother and his sister. All of them were gunned down by these militias.
At what time exactly did this incident
thing
occur,
happened?
and what time did the military respond or arrive?
There was a several call we put on the securities,
What
but
time?
they did not arrive on time.
Okay, what
Their
time?
arrival was around 1 o'clock.
And what time did the attack occur?
They attacked us around early 12 o'clock. They attacked us around early 12 o'clock, midnight.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right, so we understand that there were protests this morning. What informed the protests? And what happened in the protest?
The impromptu the protest, our women have been left widows. The community, the Mokavol nation, so many of them have left their farmland. The communities and the security that they deploy them, the army people that they deploy them, we didn't see them in the community safeguarding the people. And so that prompts to the protests that make to the blockage of the Mangu town completely, because the people are no longer safe. If if government will deploy security men to come and protect us, and these people will not go to the villages and protect the people, so that they will go back to their farmlands and farm their farmlands, what are they still doing in our town? So the women are protesting that the soldiers, since they cannot protect the community, they should go.
What is the distance between this village and the nearest military base?
The distance between the village and the nearest military camp is just 1.5 kilometers. It's just 1.5 kilometers. And so when we call them, before they will redress and come to the community, they were not on ground. They came 1 hour late.
All right, so there was shooting, a shooting of the protesters by the military. How many people were killed by the information available to you?
No, the information as at this morning, when there is a spirit because of the protest that is ongoing in the local government headquarters, there were 2 people that were gone down. We just deposited their corpse in a nearby hospital in the Mango town now. 2 people.
All right, that insert, like I told you earlier, is one that was done by the Truth Nigeria crisis reporter, senior correspondent actually in Jos, Plateau State. I will introduce him now. Good evening and welcome to the program, Masara Kim. Masara Kim, how are you doing this evening?
Well, I'm trying to be fine. As you well know, and of course for those members of the audience who might not be aware, there was a brutal attack on the south of my city, the city of Jos, in central Nigeria's Plateau State. And I just returned from the scene of the attack. What I saw with my eyes is more than just horrifying, and it's to say the least, a harrowing experience for those of them that witnessed those attacks that occurred at about 1 a.m. Today, the 10th of August, which incidentally followed an advanced warning that we gave out several hours before it happened. It's just heartbreaking, to see babies, women, children, incinerated, burnt beyond recognition, and all their family members and community members that we interacted with were left with their charred bodies, that they literally had to assemble and bury in shallow graves because, there was no time to do any. There was no time to dig as deep as 6 feet, to give these victims a befitting funeral. And moreover, it's a raining season and those areas are waterlogged and the ground is also kind of wet. And the more they dug, the more water was gushing into, the grave. And so they just had to hurry up and then bury everything, more so that the vast majority, if not all of the corpses, 21 actually, were charred. A lot of them, I think maybe 17 or I think about 15 of them were actually burned beyond recognition. And, it wasn't anything that could be kept for a longer time because they were already getting to decompose and really ooze out a bad odor.
Well, it's so sad and unfortunate that this is happening, and that it is even happening in this present day and time in a civilized society is very disheartening. Well, Masara Kim, coming back to you now, in recent time, there has been a steep increase in the spate of attacks, most especially in and around Jos and Plateau State in general. What exactly do you think is informing this, and why this rise in attacks, and who exactly are those carrying out these attacks?
The major agenda of these terrorists, who incidentally identify as members of the predominantly Fulani ethnicity, which has been blamed for thousands of genocidal massacres, at least 60,000 as of 2018, chiefly Christians, is land grab and forceful expansion of Islam. The agenda is basically to impose an Islamic caliphate in Nigeria, and the strategies being used are mass village raids, kidnap for ransom, village takeovers, and we've seen the political dynamics of such communities, being affected, because of course we practice democracy in Nigeria. And so when a particular people are no longer in a particular region, those that are the new inhabitants get to determine, who gets what politically in those areas. And when they decide who gets what, automatically that they now have a say, because whoever they put in power is not going to be, executing the agenda of that is contrary to what they have already laid out. And we've seen that happen over time. And I'll not like to bore us with the rest of the details, but over the last 1.5 decades, more than 200 Christian villages have been grabbed and turned into no-go zones in Plateau State alone. There are so many more communities that have been grabbed and totally replaced across the middle belt of Nigeria and other places where you find Christians across the north. But since I am in Plateau State and I am expected to talk about Plateau State, I will restrict it to Plateau State for now. The attacks, as you said, have been increasing, have been growing actually. Yeah. Persisting indeed in the last 2 months or 3 months, I think. Starting from the 16th of May, Plateau State has witnessed close to 400 Christian massacres, all orchestrated by, like I said, members of the Fulani ethnicity, actually terrorists who identify as members of the Fulani ethnicity. The reason is not far-fetched. Prior to the presidential and governorship elections that were held in February and March, an Islamic scholar by the name of Sheikh Yahya Jingri stood in front of thousands of Muslims, and this was actually filmed and broadcast live on social media. He stood and said that all Muslims in Plateau State should, as a matter of obligation to the Islamic faith, vote for the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, which at that time was headed by a Muslim from Masara State and a Muslim president, Muhammadu Buhari, who has also been fingered as one of the sympathizers of these terrorists by his body language and some of his decisions, his policy decisions. His administration was rated as one of the worst in terms of Christian persecution and massacres in Nigeria. Yahya Jingri Sheikh actually did say in the sermon that only the candidate of the All Progressives Congress had agreed to protect and support in the expansion of Islam in Plateau State. Of course, that was probably informed by the actions of the immediate past governor in Plateau State, Governor Simon Lalong, who at the time was the governor, the northern governors, the chairman of the northern governors in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Acted almost completely contrary to the wishes of Christians in Plateau State, perhaps in the bid to protect his political future, he was, and he said several times, that he would die for President Muhammadu Buhari, and he was absolutely loyal to Muhammadu Buhari. And by his loyalty, he failed to take decisions that would, safeguard the Christian community in Plateau State.
All right, Masara Kim, recently there was a protest.
Explanation to what is going on, and unfortunately, this is not stopping any soon, unless I believe that you will have comfort. But unless something drastic is done, these attacks are not stopping. And so far, they documented more than 1,000 villages that we have that have been seized by the Fulani terrorists, are most likely to double in the next 4 years.
Okay.
And that will in turn affect every angle of Nigeria.
Masara Kim, just a minute. Talking about the reaction, first, the response time and the reaction of the military. It recently led to a protest by women. And right now, I'll play that report. And this report is one that was covered by Truth Nigeria's crisis conflict reporter, Masara Kim. Let's listen and watch that report, and we'll be back after the report.
Masara, where are you? Come here.
Yaranmu sun mutu, mata sun mutu, mun sha wahala a duniya. Gwamnati ta ji tausayin mu, ba abinci, sojoji su koma.
No, just stand back. Stop it. Let me find the cover first.
That report that you just watched is also a protest by women in communities where the military turned on the victim. It was also sent in by Truth Nigeria senior correspondent Masara Kim. Masara Kim, how do you react to that report, and what informed that protest by these women?
That protest was informed by an attack that occurred on the 6th of August 2023 on the outskirts of Mangu town. That is the seat of the Mangu County. And that attack, which claimed 4 residents, occurred just 1 mile from a prominent military base. On the night of this attack on the 6th, which was last Sunday, the military failed to arrive at the scene from their base, which was just 5 minutes drive away, a distance of 1 mile or less, actually. They failed to arrive at the scene in time to neutralize the attack and go after the terrorists. They arrived after 2 hours or thereabouts, when 4 members of the community, of Chia community, had been killed. The damage could have actually been more than 4. The death toll actually could have been more than 4, based on reports gathered. But for the brave intervention of local civilian volunteer guards, who, armed with hunting rifles, homemade single shot guns, cartridge pipe guns, if you like, that barely cover a range of 50 meters, confronted these terrorists who swarmed the community in large numbers. Witnesses described them as hundreds. When the military arrived, 2 hours after the attack that had started since 10 p.m., instead of going after the terrorists who were still shooting their guns as they made their way into the surrounding bushes. They arrested and disarmed these local vigilantes, these local civilian guards. This was what prompted the reactions by the women who felt that the military was complicit. The military was collaborating, or at least turning a blind eye to terrorist massacres. And instead of going after the terrorists, further victimizing the victims of these terrorists. So they gathered in their thousands at the military base. They blocked roads, in Mangu, and gathered to stage a march to the military base, the Operation Hakorin Damesa base in Mangu town.
Okay.
To register, first of all, their displeasure and also demand the release of those youths that were arrested. But what was the reaction? What response did the military give? They opened fire. They set their anti-aircraft artillery, their anti-aircraft guns on full automatic and released, their ammo, their anti-aircraft ammunitions on these unarmed protesters who were only carrying leaves and singing solidarity songs, chiefly Christian hymns, as they marched. They killed 3 of them and injured several others. I was there. You just played the clips that I got from the scene.
Yeah.
At the time of that shooting, I was actually filming an interview. And if you see the interview, the end of that clip, toward the end of that clip, you should see where I was interviewing a woman and she was speaking, and then suddenly came gunshots in the background and she had to duck for cover.
Yes.
So that was what happened. If I wasn't there, somebody listening to me would have said, I am just acting or speaking based on hearsay. But thank God that at Truth Nigeria, we are always determined to bring the raw truth. That's why we are Truth.
Yeah.
The grisly raw truth of the violence that has been meted out on Christian residents in Plateau State and in the north of Nigeria over the last 2 decades. And I think what happened, despite the protests that were violently neutralized by the military in Mangu, still played out last night when Haipang community was attacked just some 20 miles south of Jos, the capital city of Plateau State. According to witnesses, first of all, we at Truth Nigeria published an advance notice of that attack as early as 7 p.m., the 9th of August.
Yeah.
This attack started at about 1:30 or 1:20 a.m. on the 10th. That's Nigerian time on the 10th. We still published a report, a breaking news, saying that there are sporadic shootings 20 miles south of Jos City. Something should be done. According to witnesses and town leaders, the military still did not arrive until after about 2 hours. And even when they arrived, they set a barrier in the center of the town, blocking and preventing the civilian volunteer guards that were attempting to respond from advancing in the direction of the terrorists. Meanwhile, these terrorists were having a field day in the eastern edge of the town, killing and burning residents in their homes. And like I said earlier, more than 15, including about 5 children under 5, were burned beyond recognition. Only their charred bodies were collected, were assembled today, and thrown in a shallow grave.
Before you go on, quickly, we will play another clip. And this time around, this clip is the funeral of some of the persons that were burned, just like Masara Kim said. Watch this clip. After this clip, we'll come back and start to round up the program. But meanwhile, this to remind you that if you want to get details on all of what we have talked about today, and even more information about Nigeria, you just have to go to Truth Nigeria website. That's www.truthnigeria.com. And on the website, you'll be able to get latest breaking news, security updates, and of course, you can get heads up on how you can stay clear of those hot zones where things like this are happening.
Babu sauran kuka Yesu yazo Babu sauran kuka Yesu yazo Sege fari chiki Yesu yazo Saya kemu agidansa Saya kemu.
Come back from that very, 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 very sad clip. And I do say that I should have warned you about the graphic nature of some of the footages that we'll get from there. That was a mass burial of those that were burned beyond recognition in the recent attack that happened. And we'll come back to Masara Kim now to give us a roundup in respect of these attacks, and we'll wrap up the program this evening. Masara Kim, very, 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 very sad funeral. It's not something that we want to experience. It's not something that any community should experience at all. Tell us about that particular clip, the funeral, and let's round up this program. Masara Kim.
All right. So I took that clip when a mass funeral, when victims, the 21 victims of the Haipang community were given a mass burial. That was at about 1 p.m. Nigerian time. I think I actually have a lot of other clips that I haven't shared. Most of them are too gory to show on screen. But then again, even while we were there, given that mass funeral, we were still getting reports that the terrorists were planning to launch another attack in another community south of that region. And well, perhaps later the viewers can have a look on at it on the Truth Nigeria website. But the first use something is that not pictures or an experience that anybody would like to have. But I would like to say that America is just about 6,500 miles from Nigeria, and the only demarcation between Nigeria and the United States of America is the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
And we all know that terrorists, terrorists always have an alliance with enemies of the West and enemies of democracy, enemies of the United States. If you do not do something because you think you are 6,500 miles away and you cannot raise your voice to mount pressure on the Nigerian authorities to stop these massacres, you are going to witness the same thing sooner or later. If you cannot reach deep into your heart to reach out to the victims of these attacks that have lost all their livelihoods, some of them are even sole survivors in their families, like an 8-month-old girl who is a sole survivor in a family of 6 that I think 2 months ago, about a month ago, actually up to now, Truth Nigeria partners and well, of course, True Nigeria partners and key officials, some key have been working to support, but she's just one by name Precious Money. She's just one out of so many that have narrowly escaped these attacks and are the sole survivors. They do not have parents, they don't have brothers, they don't have sisters, they don't have a house, they don't have food, they don't have clothes, they don't have anything. If you cannot reach into your heart to do something about these attacks, whether you are a Muslim or you're Christian, you're pagan, you're atheist, you're whatever, these attacks will come at your doorsteps, because terrorists, as we all know, have their own ideology. They have their own version of Islam. So if you think that because you're a Muslim, you're going to escape, no, you are not. Until you conform to their own patterns, until you conform to their own version, their own ideologies. So you must do something in the interest of humanity and the peace and security of the entire world to, mount pressure. At least, that's the least that you can do. Speak up and ensure that the Nigerian authorities stop these attacks. Otherwise, when they capture the oil-rich region of Nigeria South, they capture the tin and lead-rich regions of Plateau State, the uranium in Kaduna, and the gold in Niger and other places. Imagine the kind of artilleries that they will be able to purchase. Imagine the warheads that they will be able to purchase. Imagine the nukes that they will be able to purchase. Right now, they don't have those things. They don't have those things, but they are still able to purchase submachine guns, LMGs, all manner of weapons of mass destruction. And they're deploying them on innocent, unarmed civilians. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Masara Kim. And to all of our viewers and listeners all over the world, we want to say this podcast, Truth to Power, is supported by Truth Nigeria. That's why on every edition of the program, we do our best to also point in the direction of Truth Nigeria, because on the website of Truth Nigeria, you get to say the truth about what's happening in Nigeria and the fact that it is very important for you to speak out, just like Masara Kim said. The least you can do is to speak out against this persecution of minority groups and Christian groups by, unfortunately, terrorists that most of them are not identified as the Fulani ethnic group. And also, of course, they are almost exclusively Muslims, though some say that they are something else but not Muslim. But the least we can do, like Masara Kim said, is for us to speak out against it. Well, that's about the size of the program today. And as we leave you, we would like to encourage you again to visit the website of Truth Nigeria. It is www.truthnigeria.com, where you get the latest news and information about Nigeria. My name is Ehis Agbon, and the program Truth to Power will come up next week. Meanwhile, there'll be a rerun of the program on Sunday from 7 p.m. Between now and then, like always, would encourage you to reach out to a brother, bless a brother, speak right about that thing that you believe is right. And may the good mighty Lord bless and keep us all.